The book of Proverbs says, "Righteousness exalteth a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people." When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice, but when the wicked beareth rule, the people mourn. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, we have mourned and grieved for too long under an administration plagued by cheating, stealing, and lying. We join all Filipinos in praying that this time, righteousness or good governance will be the hallmark of this administration, and that there will be rejoicing and not mourning or grieving. Tama ang Pangulong Aquino na sinentro niya ang State of the Nation address niya sa good governance, sa good government, sa kontra-abuso, sa paglaban ng mga anomalya sa pamahalaan, sa pagbabagong inaasam-asam, Mr. President. Sona'y ikaw na nga. Mr. Senate President, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, mga kababayan, tradition dictates that the minority leader should rise to speak in reaction to the State of the Nation address delivered last Monday by the President of the Republic of the Philippines. It is a tradition and an obligation hallowed by the years that one has become a fundamental element of our democratic processes. By tradition, it is an opportunity for the opposition to criticize and even take apart the President's speech and counter it point by point. An opportunity fueled by the simmering passions of either a just concluded election or a forthcoming election. Yet today, what fuels the opposition marking of this tradition is a simmering passion brought about by a long-awaited and a hard-fought victory that can be claimed by both members of this administration and those who are still in the opposition. Because it was not too long ago, Mr. President, when many of those now in power were one with us fighting together for a common cause, fighting for common principles, and fighting against a common foe. It was not too long ago when many of us were together in fighting for honesty, integrity, and transparency in government. Those were the long, dark days and nights of our democracy, Mr. President. And I'm proud to say that during those long, dark days and nights, there were many of us who stood together. Kasama rin si Pangulong Benigno Noynoy Aquino III. When we were fighting against the excesses of the previous government, symbolized by anomalous contracts that became its hallmark, kasama rin namin si Pangulong Aquino. When we were questioning the legitimacy of a government elected under some of the most dubious circumstances, symbolized by the infamous greeting, "Hello, Garci," kasama rin namin si Pangulong Noynoy. When we had to struggle in the face of various executive and administrative orders issued in order to keep us from discovering the truth, kasama rin namin si Pangulong Noynoy. When members of the legislature who dared challenge the administration found their funds for their district projects withheld during their own terms, kasama ka rin namin, Pangulong Noynoy, sa lahat ng pang-aapi, sa lahat ng pananakot, at sa pag-attempt na bilhin ang mga lumaban sa administrasyon, kasama namin ang Pangulong Noynoy. Kasama ka namin noon, Pangulong Aquino, sa pakikibaka para maitatag ang isang tunay na lehitimong pamahalaan. At kung masasabi natin na sa pamamagitan lamang ng halalan nitong taong 2010 ay tunay kayong nagawagi, ay masasabi din natin tunay tayong nagwagi. Kami po sa oposisyon ay nagbubunyi rin. Indeed, it can be said that the votes in the 2010 election marked the victory of all forces struggling to banish the darkness. And while it can be argued that for every voter who casts his vote for president, one casts his vote for someone else, I would like to think, Mr. President, that the mandate for this administration lies in the fact that 3 out of 4 who cast their votes for candidates of the opposition, rejecting those candidates more closely aligned with the administration. That is the mandate for change that the administration must heed. That is the same mandate of change that the Senate Minority Bloc will be fighting for. Kasama ka namin noon sa pakikibaka, Pangulong Noynoy. Panalo ka sa botohan, pero panalo din ang oposisyon. 30 milyong botante ang bumoto para sa oposisyon. Makakaasa ka na patuloy pa rin kaming magbabantay at makikibaka upang tunay na matupad ang mga adikain at mga hangarin ng ating mga kababayan. Mr. President, some may ask then, why the need for an opposition, especially in the Senate, where everyone is independent? Is it merely tradition? And will this tradition get in the way of this administration's success? Mr. President, the Senate Minority Group is clear about its role. Our continuing fight for good governance is one that did not end with the 2010 elections. It is a continuing fight. We in the minority commit to be constructive when we criticize, be cooperative in our watchfulness, harmonious even when at times we need to raise issues that could be perceived as disruptive. We know what the Filipino people are expecting from us: to be supportive of the administration when it is doing right and to challenge it to do even more or make the reforms faster and more meaningful. We will be vocal when the administration's actions are not in line with the priorities and advocacies that were the basis for the mandate from our people. Babantayan po namin na mananatiling nasa daang matuwid ang administrasyon ni Pangulong Noynoy. We are in fact very well aware that the challenges ahead may seem Herculean. This is so because numerous issues cry out for prioritization. Napakadaming issues, Mr. President. Napakaraming suliranin, napakaraming sektor na sumisigaw na dapat silang unahin. Naintindihan namin ang bigat ng dalahin ng isang Pangulo. First, we have the needs of our overseas workers, whom we have properly identified to be the unsung heroes of our economy, but who continue to work under adverse conditions while crying out for the more effective government support and protection. While fighting for the welfare of OFWs is good, we also know that the best protection that our OFWs can get is to have enough better paying jobs or sources of livelihood in the country that they do not have to look for them abroad at they can come home to be reunited with their families. Ang pinakamagandang maibibigay sa OFWs, mas magandang trabaho at oportunidad para makapiling ulit ang mga kamag-anak. The urban poor who continue to dream the Filipino dream of owning their own home or at least a roof over their head, a stable job for the head of the family, and the opportunity to send their children to school. Our countrymen in conflict areas who seek a just and lasting peace so that progress can finally come to their communities. Our women folk who worry about food security, ang kakainin ng kanilang pamilya, about the health of their children, and who, with their whole household, are concerned about the issue of peace and order in their neighborhood, not to mention the problems of illegal drugs and the crimes that this cause. Yes, finally, the entire nation that has been so enamored with the call to arms embodied in the words, kung walang korap, walang mahirap, that they are hungry to see action taken on the many instances when their interests were sacrificed for the greed of a few. We in the opposition believe that this administration has a unique opportunity and a mandate not only to fight graft and corruption, but even ending it. Mr. President, mga kababayan, alam natin ang tunay na mukha ng korupsyon sa ating bansa. Alam natin dapat habulin ang mga tax evaders. Ngunit alam din natin na dapat ang mga corrupt at mga grafters ay mapakulong. Sa Pilipinas po, bawal magnakaw. Bawal magnakaw ng konti. Kasi yung nagnanakaw po ng konti dahil kailangan ng kakainin ng pamilya o dahil kailangan ng gamot, nakukulong. Ngunit yung nagnanakaw ng daan milyon at bilyon, siya pa ang naghari-harian sa ating bansa. Sampulan mo na, Mr. President. Hindi lamang big fish, pati mga pating at buhaya, isama mo na. Show them that your government means business. This is the chilling effect that everyone has been waiting and wanting for in dealing with corruption. We believe that the mechanisms for transparency and accountability found in the Freedom of Information Bill is the great equalizer, which will put a check on government transactions and allow every citizen to be a watchdog or a graft buster. We ask the President to certify this bill as urgent and rally his allies both in the House of Representatives and in the Senate to enact this bill. But while awaiting for such legislation, the administration can take a giant leap forward by putting in place the mechanism found in the FOI bill by issuing an executive order to be implemented by all departments and offices of the executive branch. Para wala nang itatago ang mga departamento at bawat ahensya ng gobyerno, ilagay na sa executive order na kailangan pag hiningi ang mga kailangan ng ating mamamayan, maging member ng media, maging ordinary citizen, ay makuha ang mga dokumento. We are fortunate to have a president who is a believer in the power of education. For structural reforms that is being proposed, we thank the president. But it will take time for his policies to bear fruit. In the meantime, the reality in the recent studies have shown, sa 100 na pumapasok ng grade 1, 86 lang po ang pumupunta ng grade 2. 76 lang po ang pumapasok ng grade 4. 67 lang po ang pumapasok sa grade 6. 75 lang po ang gumagraduate sa elementary. Out of this 65, 58 lang po ang pumapasok ng high school. And only 42 lang po ang graduate ng high school. Sa 100 pumasok ng grade 1, 14 na agad po ang nag-drop out sa grade 2. Mahirap po sigurong mangarap kahit malinis ang gobyerno kung grade 2 pa lang ay drop out na. Kaya yung pangtawid na mga programa, Mr. President, ay importante din. This means as urgent as improving the quality of the graduates of our nation, it is also urgent to increase the dropout rates and also to address spreading illiteracy. These very basic concerns can have a far-reaching consequence in our productivity as a nation. Ang realidad, maganda ang mga reforma, ngunit kailangan ng agaran, pantawid na solusyon sa mabigat na problema, dala ng kahirapan. Parang pag-alis ng tongpats, tama ito at dapat itong unahin. Ngunit ang epekto ay matagal pang mararamdaman ng mga mahihirap nating kababayan, lalo sa sinabi ng SWS, na 4 na milyon ang nakakadama ng tomguts o gutom, Mr. President. Ganun din mga commuters ng MRT at LRT. Umaasa pag walang korap, walang mahirap. Ngunit nangangamba na sa pagtaas ng pasahe, mauubos ang konting sweldo na mauwi sana sa pamilya. Again, Mr. President, mga pangtawid na programa para ang maapektuhan, hindi yung maliliit nating kababayan. The President said, pwedeng mangarap muli. Essential ingredients to fulfill these dreams are concrete programs and policies on jobs, prices, and redistribution of wealth. Trabaho, presyo ng mga bilihin, at pagbigay ng solusyon sa suliranin na ang kayamanan ng Pilipinas ay nasa kamay ng iilan lamang sa ating bansa. While we join our people in disgust over the benefits and bonuses of the MWSS officials and their indifference to their retirees whose pensions have not been paid, we ask ourselves, is MWSS the exception? Ito ba ay nakalusot lang? Or is it the rule? Lahat ba ay ganito ang ginagawa? Magsusumbong kaya, Mr. President, ang mga bagong appointees mo sa government-owned and controlled corporations? O mamahalin na rin kaya nila kung meron silang 200, 300, o 400,000 piso sa buwan-buwan na sahod, benepisyo at bonus? Mr. President, maganda ang ginawa ng Secretary of Finance na pina-audit kaagad sa COA ang mga GOCCs. Ngunit may mas mabilis at epektibong paraan. Ngayon pa lamang, na umpisa pa lang ng iyong administrasyon, ilantad na, ilabas ang sahod, bonuses at benepisyo ng bawat opisyalis ng GOCC. Have them submitted to the Palace, to the Senate, and to the House of Representatives. Malaman na natin kung lahat ba ng GOCCs o iilan ang ganito ang patakaran para matigil na. Dalawa, mag-issue ng guidelines ang palasyo sa limitasyon ng mga bonuses at benepisyo para ngayon at dadating na panahon, wala nang aabuso at wala nang taguan ng bonuses o ng mga pondo ng bayan. I am not aware of how many of the discoveries that President Aquino is making at the national level is also, Mr. President, I am very much aware that many of the discoveries that President Aquino is making at the national level is also being made or also being discovered at the local level. Indeed, when the President announced that so much of the national budget has been spent, leaving only so little for the rest of the year, and when the President mentioned abuse and anomalous contracts, I could only shake my head in the knowledge that this too is happening in my hometown of Taguig. Nangyayari po to sa bawat ahensya, pati sa local government. And when the President remarked that these discoveries are only the beginning, I could only shake my head in worry as to what else the new bureau directors, governors, mayors, and so many other offices, agencies, towns, and cities nationwide will discover about the excesses of their predecessors. The Bible tells us not to worry. Sadly, excesses committed by some who ran under the same party with the President and are now boasting na malakas naman sila sa administrasyon. Naniniwala kami magiging patas ang Aquino administration. Ang tama ay tama at mali ay mali. Sumuporta man sa kanya o kinalaban man siya nung huling halalan. Mr. President, we in the minority are well aware of this and more are one with the President in seeking to achieve all the promises of his administration at the earliest possible time. We are also aware, Mr. President, mga kababayan, that not everyone now with the administration has always been with us in the good and noble fight. Kung maaring tignan ng Pangulong Noynoy ang kanyang bakuran, makikita niya na hindi lahat ng kasama niya ngayon ay kasama sa laban noon. Hindi lahat ng sumama sa kanya sa eleksyon ay kasama niya sa paglaban sa dating administrasyon. Katunayan, marami o mayroon sa kanila ay kasama din sa nagpakasarap sa Arroyo administration. Tuturing marami sa oposisyon ang hindi niya kasama sa eleksyon, ngunit kasama niya sa tunay na lumaban sa paglaban sa administrasyon na uli kinilala sa stealing, cheating, and lying. Salamat at pinatawad ninyo ang mga nakasakit sa inyo. Ngunit hindi lamang kayo ang nasaktan, nakasakit ang partido at grupo ninyo. Kaya para sa tunay na rekonsilyasyon, pinapatawad na rin namin kayo. Paghingi ng patawad ay dapat hindi lamang, ang paghingi ng patawad ay dapat lamang dahil tayo humihingi din ng patawad sa Panginoon. We all make mistakes. Kung nakasakit, patawarin sana. Ngunit tulad ng binanggit nyo, Mr. President, ang patawad ay madali sa nakasakit sa isang politiko. Ngunit ang nakasakit sa bayan dapat maparusahan. Again, Mr. President, sampulan mo na ang mga nag-api at nakasakit sa bayan. That the President Aquino today enjoys 90% approval rating is something to cheer about. But I need not tell him how quickly that support will dissipate if he is not careful about those who seek to endear themselves to him. The reality, Mr. President, is that history is replete with administrations launched with the most noble of circumstances or under the most overwhelming of mandate that somehow lose their direction along its way. It is the role of the opposition to remind the administration to be true to its course, na manatili sa daang matuwid. It was not too long ago when a president declared that his administration will be governed by the principle walang kamag-anak at walang kaibig-kaibigan. They were much applauded remarks and warmly welcomed by the public. But soon allegations went out that such administration was losing its way, with forces perhaps outside the president's control as the culprit or the culprits. And one day, we were captivated by an image of one of the most popular presidents of our republic having to leave Malacanang Palace as a victim of a conspiracy of circumstances. Clearly, the lesson is that popularity fades and is no guarantee that a popular president, could stay in office for the duration of his term. This was followed by another set of lofty remarks uttered amidst the euphoria of another people power. Who can forget the lofty promises of the succeeding administration embodied in 4 core beliefs? Number 1, we must be bold in our national ambitions so that our challenge must be that within the decade, we will fight and win the fight against poverty. 2, We must improve moral standards in government and society in order to provide a strong foundation for good governance. 3, we must change the character of our politics in order to create fertile ground for true reforms. Our politics of personality and patronage must give way to new politics of party programs and processes and the process of dialogue with the people. And 4, finally, I believe in the leadership by example. We should promote solid traits such as work ethic and dignified lifestyle, matching action to rhetoric, performing rather than grandstanding. Who said that, Mr. President? Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, when she took the presidency. Again, there were much applauded remarks, warmly welcomed by the public, especially by the people on the stage together with the President. But what happened? Again, very soon there were allegations that the administration was losing its way, with forces perhaps outside the President's control as culprit. And one day we're captivated by the voice of the President speaking to an election officer, the Hello Garci, and parking what was to be the most serious threat to its hold on power. Yet, this time, the administration was able to capitalize on the captive political system and the frailties of human nature to stay in power long after its popular mandate has turned into popular disdain. The lesson here is that unpopularity was no guarantee that a president can be ousted from office. In both instances, too much applauded proclamations of principles at the start of two different administrations were overtaken by the painful realities of politics. Can this happen again? The answer, Mr. President, is yes. It can happen under this administration, under this president. Again, Mr. President, the answer is yes. And that is where we in the opposition come in. History has shown us that given human nature and even our Filipino values of pakisama and utang na loob, sometimes it is the opposition that is the only one that can tell the president the truth or paint for him the true picture. The truth is, in this case, sometimes our friends can be our worst enemies. The author, Francis Fukuyama, has already pointed out the dangers of small circles of trust. In his book, Trust, Fukuyama has demonstrated that societies that are most progressive are those whose hallmark is a wide circle of trust among its people, while societies not as progressive are those where the circles of trust are small, limited to the closest of friends and kin. Ang mga progresibong mga bansa, yung pong pinagkakatiwalaan ay medyo malawak. Ngunit yung maliliit na bansa o mga bansang naghihirap, mga kaibigan at kamag-anak lang ang pinagkakatiwalaan. Mr. President, I would dare to add that this aspect of human nature is complicated further by our own nature as Filipinos. Our penchant to avoid disputes, ayaw natin ng away, or saying something negative, or being bearer of bad news, oftentimes in the desire to prevent conflict and confrontation. Will President Aquino then be served well by the perception that he is now surrounded mostly by friends? There have been comments that rather than having the best and the brightest around him, his cabinet if not, is composed of kapuso, kapamilya, and also kabarkada. The criticism of getting the best and the brightest in government has been our own history. That when our government was filled with people that were the best and the brightest, sabi nila, ginagamit yung talino sa corruption. And this was the time when corruption was at its peak. But why should we fear that if we have full faith and confidence in a moral leadership of our President? Buo ang tiwala ng ating mga kababayan sa moral compass ng Pangulong Aquino. He can afford to get the best and the brightest in government. Indeed, when the challenges are so high and the public expectations even higher, we cannot gamble with not having the best and the brightest at the helm. Maaring hindi basketball ang favorite sport ni President Aquino. But for the basketball-loving Filipinos, we know that during crunch time, sa last 2 minutes o kaya sa Game 7 o Game 5, pinaka-importanting championship game, kailangan yung first 5 ang tatawagin mo, yung pinaka-magagaling mo. This is crunch time, Mr. President. And President Aquino, as coach, must have only the best and the brightest on the floor for him and with him. As the President has shown that he is willing in certain instances to go out of his circle of supporters to find the best and the brightest, aminado po tayo. May mga pinili siya na the best and the brightest. We in the opposition will do our best to help him make sure that he has the best and the brightest to assist him and work ahead. Proverbs 11:14 says, when no counsel is, the people fall. But in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. Mr. President, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it had been pointed out to me that for the last 50 or so years, since 1960, 3 political families have held the highest office of the land for a total of 41 years. For 4 years, from 1961 to 1965, President Macapagal. From 2001 to 2009, another Macapagal was president, or a total of 13 years. 1965 to 1986, a total of 21 years, President Marcos was president. And from 1986 to 1992, President Aquino, and if we add that of the present President Aquino, we will have 12 years. If one were to add the 6 years of Fidel Ramos to those who think of him as a cousin of President Marcos, and the 6 years again of President Aquino to the 6th year of his mother's presidency, then from 1961 to 2016, a span of 55 years, only 3 political clans could have held the highest office of the land for a full 52 years. Why do I raise this matter, Mr. President? And why me, who can also be accused of having profited from the name recognition because I too have a father, not to mention a sister, in politics and in the Senate before me? Mr. President, members of this august chamber, ladies and gentlemen, when President Aquino declared during his inaugural that it is the Filipino people who is his boss, he made a declaration that was in truth and in fact superfluous. Dahil alam naman natin lahat na boss natin ang tao. Unless we have forgotten, ours is supposed to be a democracy, which is by definition the rule of the people. But why then? Bakit po binanggit ito? Why did the President have to make this statement? Is it because much of our political elite, which counts you and me, have long forgotten this basic fact of democracy and have taken it that political office is an entitlement to those who come from the political clans? Worse, did the President have to make the statement, which perhaps was one of the most widely applauded in his remarks, isa po to sa pinaka-pinapalakpakan, yung sinabi niyang amo natin ang ating kababayan. Because our people themselves have come to accept that our politics is a politics of clans. Tanggap na ba ng ating mga kababayan to? I look around this room, Mr. President, and see around me representatives of the Filipino people who also happen to come from Manila's political elite. But having known most of you for many years, I am heartened by the fact that entitlement is farthest from your consciousness. Especially you, Mr. President, who worked yourself up from poverty up to the highest position in the Senate. And indeed, it is the expectation that need to be met that at first and foremost in our priorities. Kailangan klarong-klaro sa ating mga kababayan sa lahat ng ating gagawin na sila ang amo natin. But when one is in power, it is easy to forget. Former President Havel, former President of the Czech Republic, has pointed out in his memoirs, when a president does not have to open a door for himself or worry about what to eat or fear being wet in the rain, when he doesn't have to care about prices of food in the wet market or cost of utilities, or even how much to pay his household, then it comes so easy to become disconnected from the reality of life around you and disconnect from the realities that our countrymen have to face day in and day out. Tama po si Presidente Habel. Pag hindi ikaw nagbubukas ng sarili mong pinto, hindi ikaw ang namamalengke, hindi ikaw nagbabayad ng mga bills mo sa pagte-text, sa pagtatawag, hindi ikaw nagbabayad ng tubig at kuryente, nakakalimutan mo at nagkakaroon ng disconnect. I suspect, Mr. President, that much of what ails this country stems from that disconnect. A disconnect that I am hopeful will be a thing of the past under this administration. If the wang-wang is to be the gauge, dahil nasapul at nakita to ng ating Pangulo at naramdaman ang pulso ng ating kababayan. And then again, unless the President of the Republic is constantly reminded of the realities of life, kailangan po naming ipaalala ito parati, especially the reality of the lives of the common folk that he may not have lived himself. It is easy for him to forget. We will be watching. We are humbled by the task and the opportunity of being among the vanguards of the President's campaign promises. We in the opposition, in serving God and our people, will do our best to faithfully serve both him and our republic by constantly reminding him of those realities. In the end, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to end with this appeal to President Aquino. Do your job as you see fit and to the best of your abilities, and we will do the same. But rest assured, while we may differ as to the means, our having fought in the trenches together for the establishment of a government that is honest, that is transparent, that is transparent, that is the legitimate guarantee that our end goals are the same. Sa pagbabagong matagal ng pinagdadasal, sa pagbabagong inaasam-asam, Mr. President, sona'y ikaw na nga. Mabuhay ang sambayanang Pilipino. God bless the President. God bless the Philippines. God bless us all.
Thank you.